Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Megan and I'm glad that you're watching this. This video is just my story of how I found hope amidst my suffering with chronic illness and all of the things that have come along with that. So the reason I'm sharing this is because I've had some people reach out and ask if I would share about my faith and what's been helpful for me amidst all of the pain that I've experienced. I actually uploaded a video several months ago about my faith and sharing what brought me hope amidst it all, but I didn't like how I went about it. There were some things that I didn't articulate, I thought, very well and was not clear on, and so I actually took that down, and this is my reattempt in sharing what's been helpful. I first want to say that what brought me hope amidst it all and what was the greatest comfort was my faith and my belief in Jesus Christ. Some of the specifics about it are, I think, personal to me and relevant to my life and were a comfort, but will not be a comfort for everyone. And how I landed on certain beliefs and logic will not be everyone's story or journey. And so I just want to say there's a lot that I don't know about life and about faith and about God. And these are just some things that have been very helpful for me. And if they're helpful for you, take them. But if they're not, disregard. So that's basically my intro. First and foremost, I just wanted to preface with chronic illness and being in extreme dysfunction and extreme pain has brought about suffering like I never imagined. The past 2 years, I've considered existential questions and things about life that I never thought I would consider before, because of the harshness of my reality. And I know that a lot of people experience similar things once you're exposed to certain unfortunate realities. So first and foremost, one thing that was helpful for me was I read a book, and it's called A Grace Disguised. It's written by Sittser, if you would like to look it up. I found that book very helpful because it is a man's just story of grief and loss, and it's a universal perspective on the matter. He, I won't give away the book, but he went through extreme tragedy in his life. It wasn't chronic illness related, but he documents his trial with faith, his trial with life, his trial with hardship, and it's just a really raw, honest depiction of a man's journey. And I found a lot of things that he said very valuable, and so I have recommended that book to a lot of people, and I've found a lot of comfort in it myself. Something going off of that I found interesting was my first approach to suffering was to read books by C.S. Lewis, like The Problem of Pain, and to try to philosophically and theologically deconstruct things so that my pain and suffering logically made sense to me. That's just naturally how I'm wired. But I realized along the way that I was very frustrated by this process, partially because I did not have the brain capacity to read a lot of works that I wanted to read. I lost the ability to read a lot of the times, to process words and to understand, so I couldn't. But also I realized that more than understanding, I wanted something deeper. I wanted a different sense of comfort and a different sense of hope that at the time those works just weren't helpful for me. I've found that reading things like that go deeper into philosophy and existentialism have been more beneficial when I'm not in really difficult seasons of suffering. So then they provided a foundation for me later. So if you are somebody who likes C.S. Lewis and those kinds of works, I would suggest, if you want to read a book, A Grief Observed. It's C.S. Lewis's I believe his journals that were later put into a book talking about his grief when he lost his wife and his honest, raw dialogue with the Lord. And so I found that really helpful and relatable. A key theme with chronic illness and suffering for me has been loss, losing functions, losing people along the way who've just stepped out of my life, losing dreams for the future, hopes. Just my whole life felt torn apart for so long and uprooted. And so the theme of my life for a long time was grief. I just felt deep, intense grief for the things I was mourning and the things that I realized I was losing daily. And I was grieving for my future because I realized it would likely be like nothing I ever imagined. And so finding works and Christian perspectives on grief have been really helpful. So those are two of them. That's first. And then next, I wanted to share, I shared this on my Instagram if you follow my Instagram, but on my way to one of my prolotherapy sessions, which if you aren't familiar, is a treatment I did for my neck. I had a diagnosis of craniocervical instability, so the vertebrae in my neck would abnormally move, cutting off blood flow to my brain, creating severe dysfunction and pain. And I had, on my way to one of my treatments for this condition, I was mentally trying to prepare myself for the pain I was about to endure because the treatment sessions were brutal, in all honesty. They were very uncomfortable. I was receiving injections to my neck that were supposed to create an injury, and they were aggressive and some of the worst pain I've experienced outside of my illness. My illness was much worse in the pain that did. But so every time I went back, I had to mentally prepare myself for what I was about to encounter. And this is one of the things that I wrote while I was on my way to one of my treatments, and I later shared it. But the words and the realizations that I write about were comforting to me. So I'm going to read it by the off chance it might be of help to you as well. This is what I said. Some thoughts from the car ride over while prepping for the physical discomfort I knew I was about to be in. I've never known God to be so gentle, kind, and near as I have in these past several months. This might seem ironic given the condition of my body. I don't see God as a malevolent power refusing to take away my suffering. I see Jesus beside me, with me, whispering softly that I don't see the whole picture. He's not taunting me with the unknown, but rather bearing the pain with me, knowing my finitude was not designed to know the whole picture. I was designed at my best to depend and rely on Jesus Christ. I was designed to bear my burdens in this short life with Jesus. One of the greatest lessons Christ has taught me as of recent is humility. It's been humbling to realize how little control I actually have. Bodily capabilities and everyday functions that were once so easy are now challenging or impossible. Amidst it all, God isn't Pollyanna or unkind. He doesn't believe pain or suffering to be trivial. He mourns and he weeps. He hates the pain, but there's a greater malady than the pain, to be separated from him. In our purest form, we were made to know and be known by God. My Savior reminds me the way in which he saved the world was through being a peasant, being beaten, and being broken. The passage to enlightenment was barred by a necessity through hell. Why would I expect my journey to be any different? I see pain and trial differently now. I'm not a masochist. I don't enjoy pain, and I never will. But in spite of the suffering, I feel humbled that Christ still refines and molds me more into his likeness through the pain. In spite of it all, he uses it for my good and his glory. This pain, this suffering, this anguish isn't the end of the story, and that concept is made reality by Jesus Christ. Okay, so that was one thing that I found of help going off of that. Something that formed a lot of those beliefs for me was the belief that God does not create evil. I believe that suffering is from the devil and not from God. I believe that God allows suffering in this world and allows pain. But I don't think that he enjoys it at all. I don't think he likes it. I think that he empathizes deeply with my pain. I believe he feels my suffering with me, and I believe he carries my burdens with me. I believe that something that was key for me in that was, I believe that for love to be present in the world, it has to be a choice. And I believe that God gave humanity free will. And so as a result, we have the choice to choose God. We have the choice to love God. We have the choice to love other people. And the expense of that free choice is that some people will not choose that. We all, myself, I choose not to be loving. At times I sin, I mess up, I make mistakes, I hurt people, sometimes unintentional, sometimes not. And the reality is there is malicious people in this world, and that creates evil and that creates suffering. But beyond just people's evil actions, I believe that a reality of that choice of allowing love is that we live in a fallen and broken world. And so naturally there are things like illness, there are things like disease and natural disasters, just destruction and tragedy. And so one thing that I really held to at the beginning of my severe suffering was, I eventually will be in eternity with God. I believe that there is such a thing as heaven, where there is no more suffering, there is no more pain. And because I put my belief and faith in Jesus Christ, that will be a reality for me one day. But I believe that to get there and for everyone to be able to genuinely have that choice of belief, there has to be the possibility of suffering and evil. And so I've had to, in my suffering, hold the perspective that I can hope for eternity, and I would rather have the suffering in my 80 so years on earth that includes eternity and eternal love. I'd rather have that than not have the suffering at all and not be able to experience eternal love. And so that's basically how my mind has operated and processed a lot. I think that in that, one of the greatest things, and I kind of touched on my Instagram post, was I believe that Jesus Christ is very present. He is near me in my pain. I've seen that love through other people who have sacrificially loved me. But I've also just experienced that through the presence of God in my suffering. And so that's been one of the greatest comforts, is that I'm not alone in my pain. And that doesn't take away the pain all the time, which has been hard to grasp. But that reality of his nearness has been helpful. And then let me look real quick at my notes. I think I may have mentioned a couple other things. Okay, another thing that was of help for me, and I wrote about it, was there came a point where my suffering was, in my pain included, I was bedbound a lot. I had a really extreme sensory sensitivity that was, in all honesty, excruciating. I hated being alive a lot of the time because being alive meant being miserable. My body could not process so much. For example, I would be upstairs in my room and I could hear downstairs the padding of people's feet when they were wearing socks, and that padding, that gentle padding, would send pain through my head and through the rest of my body, and it was excruciating. The sound of people's voices was excruciating, and essentially I couldn't escape noise. Also, light and stimulation was excruciating, on and off, and that's also, to be alive, you can't escape that. But so I had to be isolated a lot of the time, and that was emotionally challenging, and a burden in and of itself. But for a while, in this reality of sensory sensitivity, extreme sensory deficit, I was continually getting worse, and doctors didn't know why. They didn't have answers for me. Some told me, "I'm so sorry, I don't think you're gonna ever get better. I suggest you get a really great therapist." And that was all some people told me before I found treatment, and that was crushing. So I realized I had to confront the potential that I would never get better, that I would be bedbound someday completely, that I might never be able to walk again, that I might live another 60 years, whatever, on this earth, and it might be primarily suffering. And so part of my journey was confronting that reality, and in that confrontation, these are some thoughts I shared on my Instagram of what I found helpful about my faith to confront that. And these are my thoughts. I said, in the fall of 2020, I frequently thought about the Christian belief that people are made in the image of God. I realized in the truly terrifying decline of my body that the Christian belief system gave me worth no matter my physical state. If my body never healed, I had innate and intrinsic value simply because I was made in the image of the divine. I believed that if I was bedbound someday, immobile, if I had little if any use of my mind, if I had such a compromised nervous system I could barely interact with people, I still had purpose. I still had a reason to keep living, even if it seemed just short of existing. The pain isn't what terrified me. It was this potential of merely surviving for the rest of my life. I am truly lucky. These harsh realities aren't my reality. I was never consistently that severe. I'm aware, however, that not everyone has that privilege. Suffering of any kind necessitates a hope big enough to endure it. Not all hopes are created equal. I think everyone puts their faith in something. Choosing to put my faith in Christ has given me good reason to endure my suffering. I have not since then found a better way. So basically, if there is no meaning to life, if there is no purpose to life, my conclusion was, I do not know why some people would want to keep living. That's harsh, but that is how my thought process worked. And so it is truly the reality that I believe that I and others and everyone is created in the image of God. And because of that, we have such innate and intrinsic worth and purpose that goes beyond any disability and any suffering. And I believed in it all, that God would truly use everything for my good and his glory, even if I didn't understand it. And so those are some things that have been a help for me. It's been a painful journey. It's been a lot of grief, and with that, there's been a lot of good, and faith has carried me through it all. So That's all for now. If you have any questions, if you just want to talk, I share my email address in the about information of my YouTube channel, and you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I hope that you are well, and I hope that this is of help.